Hey gals, welcome back to Binge-Free Bestie, the podcast where we ditch diets, break free from binge and emotional eating, and finally make peace with food and our bodies. I'm your host, Nick Garbedia. I'm a registered therapist who's been there herself. Binge eating, body shame, the whole exhausting cycle. I know it inside out. But here's the good news. Food freedom is totally possible, and my food freedom method is how you will get there. Every week on the potty, I'm going to be sharing real evidence-based tools from my therapy practice and my own recovery to help you to break up with binge and emotional eating and build a calmer, more empowered relationship with food. So, if you're done with the diet cycle and you're ready to reclaim your energy, your confidence, and your life, then you're in the right place. Hey, welcome back, Bestie. Today, I want you to picture an 11-year-old girl flipping through her mum's Weight Watchers books that she found on the kitchen table. Now, this girl, she's not overweight. Nobody's told her that she needs to diet, and no adult has sat her down and really said anything directly, but she's been paying attention. She's been reading the Cosmo magazines. She has been watching the movies. And, of course, she has noticed which girls are getting the attention at school and why. And her 11-year-old brain has very quietly, efficiently connected the dots. Well, that girl was me. And I had absolutely no idea in that moment that that silent little calculation was going to shape the next 2 decades of my life. So, Bestie, welcome back to the potty. I'm Nick Garbedia, and I am your very enthusiastic guide to get you out of the diet culture fog towards a binge-free life. And what I want to talk about today, it's going to be a personal one, but I know that these stories that I'm going to share with you are going to be a mirror of your experiences. So instead of making this a really super educational style podcast today, I'm going to talk you through the chapters of my life, which is actually the life that many of us millennial gals had. And I'm going to share a lesson that now I've recovered, now I've found food freedom. Lessons, 5 of them, that I wish younger versions of me had known. So we're going to be talking to the childhood self, the teen years, the girl in her 20s. Of course, that was the one who was really deep in the binge eating disorder and didn't really even know why or what that even was. And we're going to be talking about the woman who was about to go under the surgical knife, thinking that that smaller body was finally going to save her. These are the things that I wish someone had just put into our hands before all of the damage was done. And the reason why I want to share this with you, as I said before, I know that these stories are going to resonate with you. These are not just my chapters. If you grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, I would very confidently put my money on the fact that you're going to hear your own story. And so the purpose of our chat today is some healing reflection to send some love and compassion back to those younger versions of us. And I would love to hear from you. So if this resonates and you do hear yourself, which I think you will, please send me a DM on Instagram and let me know which of these stories and lessons resonate with you the most. So let's get into it. Okay, so thing 1 that I would love to share, I'm going to send back to the 11-year-old self. So this is circa 2004, and I wish that someone had told her that the world has taught you that thin equals worthy, and it's not your fault you believe them. You were just a girl who was listening and responding. So, if we go back to that kitchen table, I was 11, and that was actually the first time that I became aware that my body was something to be managed. And that realization didn't come from just one moment. And I want you to reflect on this for yourself too, because I'm sure that that knowing or that realization came from 1,000 small moments that just all pointed in the same direction. So examples were my mum had a lot of Weight Watchers books around the house. Not because she was a bad mum, But just because she was a woman living in this, world that all of us were. I mean, even my nana, my grandma, she was dieting too. Women just dieted in the 80s, 90s, early 90s, right? That was normal. That was just what women did. And I mean, that is what women are still doing now, right? So it wasn't just diet books that taught me that, it was everything. So yeah, it was the magazines, Women's Health, Cosmo. I mean, look at who was on the covers of these mags. So we had, Kate Moss, Jennifer Aniston. These women were tall, thin, blonde, flawless. And we had workout plans on page 47. And then we had, what does she eat in a day? And, just this is what beautiful looks like. This is what you should eat. This is what you should wear. This is what is desirable. And then movies, right? Oh my God, movies. Princess Diaries, one of my absolute faves growing up. Still love it now. But I mean, what is the premise, right? Awkward, frizzy-haired Mia. She gets this royal makeover. And then she becomes beautiful. And then she gets the guy. So the transformation from like ugly duckling to beautiful princess is the plot. And then the glow up is when she gets the reward. And how about Bridget Jones's Diary? Another one I adored, still do. But Bridget is portrayed as this lovable, hapless mess. The kind of crux of the joke is because she's a bit chubby, right? That's the joke. Her size is the punchline. And what about Fat Monica on Friends, right? We all remember Fat Monica. She was Chandler's best kept secret. She's funny in the flashbacks. She's used as a punchline. And I mean, the clear message embedded in those scenes is that Chandler never could have liked her back then when she was in a bigger body. And he only started to see her when she was thin. So love was the reward for shrinking. And so I absorbed all of this. You absorbed all of this from our childhood. And the brain does exactly what brains are designed to do, and that is to build a belief system from the data that it's receiving. So the data was thin equals beautiful, beautiful equals lovable, and therefore thin equals worth. Now, what I want you to hear in this, because this is the part that matters for you, not just for me. If you learned this from a young age too, even from childhood, have a wee think about what age you picked up this message. And just know you weren't vain, you weren't shallow, you were just a child. And you were being educated by a culture that had one very loud, very consistent message about women's bodies. And you happen to do a great job at learning that. Okay, that belief that thinness equals worth. I know that belief is really, really entrenched in you too. And most women who struggle with food in their bodies can trace it back to these kind of moments. And it's not always one big dramatic moment. It can be a slow accumulation of messaging that adds up to, hey, the way my body looks determines whether I'm enough. And so it was really, really helpful to understand where these beliefs came from first so that you can start to dismantle it or at very least, send back lots of love and self-compassion because it was never true, but it was everywhere. Okay, so lesson 2. This is one that I would send back to like my 15-year-old self. And I would tell her that being targeted for how you look does not mean that you need to change the way you look. So high school, right? Ugh, I did not have a fun time at high school. I went to an all-girls high school. And if 11-year-old me was quietly building a belief system about bodies and worth, then 15-year-old me was having that belief system absolutely screamed at her through the school corridors. So when I was 15, I had chronic acne, braces, and I had like red undertones in my hair. The color I have now is paid for, but I've always had a red undertone. And in the New Zealand sun, basically it would fire up. And it was like a neon sign for every girl who wanted an easy target, right? And there's a bit of a derogatory term here called oranger, as in orangutan, yes. So I would be walking through school and the girls would walk behind me and yell out, "Hey, Ranger, hey, Braceface." They would make comments about my skin being an oil slick. Yeah, really, really loved high school. Those were the days. So I just did what any teenager would do. And I got a box of hair dye from the supermarket. And I thought, I'll just go brown. Of course, I went jet black. And my mum, bless her heart, suggested if I just get a haircut, maybe it will look better. And she had this really lovely cut, and she still wears it now, the Dido cut. The singer, White Flag, might go down with this shit. Dido. She had that gorgeous, flicky out, effortlessly chic look. Very iconic, very early 2000s. My mum had that. And so she said, why don't you get that? And so into the hairdresser I went. And I came out with a very rounded, full-fringed bowl cut that also was jet black. So to summarize, I was a teenager with a black bowl cut, braces, acne, and I guess, it kind of made me a big target for those girls at school. And so I wish I could just go back to that girl, to that version of me. She was trying so hard, and just give her a really big hug. I mean, I can laugh about it nowadays, but oh my God, at the time, rough. So rough. I mean, think about it. When you are a teenager and your appearance is being torn apart daily, your brain wants to search for something it can control. And for me, that was my body. Okay, I couldn't fix my skin overnight. I couldn't magic away the braces. I had to wear those things for a year. But I could restrict. I could eat less. And I could work out harder. I could try and make my body smaller. And I could try quite desperately to manufacture something about myself that would hopefully make me a little bit better, a little bit more acceptable. And so if anyone listening, if you're listening, has your own version of this story, please send back love to that past version of you, or the current version if that's still something that's happening for you. Being targeted for your appearance was never actually information about your body, right? It's information about those girls, those bullies. It's information about a culture that teaches girls and women to bond over tearing each other apart. So if you were a teen who was bullied for the way you look, just know, send back that love, send back that compassion, and tell that younger version of you that she didn't actually need to change. What she needed was someone to tell her that what was happening wasn't a reflection of worth or value. It was a reflection of them. Quick pause here, besties, because I want to share with you a free resource that might really, really help you. So if you're struggling with overeating, binges, emotional eating, or maybe food just feels like it has a little bit too much power over you, then I have created a free guide. It's called the Emotional Eater's Fix. So inside this guide, I'm breaking down some of the real reasons why this pattern has been happening. And I'm going to walk you through a few simple tools that you can start using straight away to shift your relationship with food and your body. It's totally free. You can just grab it through the link in the show notes. All right, let's jump back into the episode. Now, lesson 3 or reflection 3 that I would like to send back is going to go to my early 20s. So I was doing an undergrad degree at uni. I was doing psychology and Russian history, actually. I just loved Russian history. Anyway, so I would have told her that what you went through changed how you relate to your body. And that makes complete logical sense. So just a quick pause here before I tell you this next part of my story. And this is something that I see all the time in my work as a counselor. So I'm an eating disorder therapist, but also a trauma therapist. And women who know their emotional or binge eating is connected to something, but they don't feel like their something was bad enough to count. This is really, really common. So a lot of women I work with will say things to me like, hey, I had a pretty normal childhood, or, oh, well, it wasn't that serious, or other people have been through way worse than me. And then they'll say in the same breath that they had years or decades of binging, of isolating, of using food to cope with feelings that they couldn't really name. I just want you to hear this if that kind of makes sense for you. You don't need to have experienced something really extreme, like a big T trauma, for your nervous system to have been impacted. Essentially, if anything that has happened to you across your life has destabilized or distressed you, then your body's response is valid. Okay? So, my little piece of the story there is when I went to uni, first year in uni, something happened, right? A big T trauma, the kind that really changes how safe you feel in your own skin, in your body, in the world. And so I'm not going to go into details, but what followed after that trauma was I really just stopped being able to regulate effectively. So if we think about that, young me who started restricting as a way to feel safe and in control of something, and then my sense of safety got completely shattered, well, I just turned to the one thing that did sometimes give me comfort, something that was easy, something that was accessible: food. So what happened after that was I started isolating a lot in my flat. I actually sat in bed all day watching Charmed on repeat instead of going to my lectures. Just sitting in bed, watching my comfort telly program Charmed, eating those takeaways, hiding in my room. And over those next few years, what has started was a bit of emotional eating to deal with that trauma. And then it deepened into a full blown binge eating disorder. And that stayed with me for my entire 20s. And the clinical piece that I want you to take from this, because this is the part that really transforms this understanding into a lot of self compassion, is when your nervous system is overwhelmed, when something happens that your body just doesn't feel safe already processing yet, it's going to look for regulation, is going to look for anything that brings a moment of relief or comfort, an opportunity to avoid, to numb, to dissociate. And of course, food is just a really logical answer to that, right? You know it works. It is fast. Food is always available in one way or the other. And it's not a character flaw or that you were being lazy or not trying hard enough to get through that thing. You were employing a coping strategy. And so something I wish that I could tell my younger self: eating was not the problem. It was just being a solution to a problem. And that was okay for a little bit. Okay. For a little while, it worked and it was somewhat helpful. But what I also wish I could tell that version of me is that until you address what the food is actually trying to serve, what you're trying to avoid, you can do 100 new diets. You can do all the well-being hacks. You can try to stop those binges, but they'll just keep coming back because one of the root causes for the behavior, that overeating, has never been addressed. So just have a wee think and wonder, is there a connection between your eating behaviors and a trauma or a major event that's happened in your life, or maybe a series of those? And has food been a coping tool for you to help you get through those moments, those times, to help your nervous system to regulate? Or maybe just to help you to dissociate or distract from that distressing time or that trauma? If the answer to that is yes, then you do need to work through that trauma. Go and talk to someone, get some support, get some strategies to learn how to regulate and to process what happened. Okay. So, lesson 4, and this is going to go to the young woman I was in my mid 20s. And I say this with so much love, but losing weight will not stop the binge eating. And you've heard this before. So, in my mid 20s, I had a bariatric surgery, a gastric sleeve. And I've talked about this a few times on the potty. And I have some really in-depth discussions for you around weight loss surgery and binge and emotional eating. So if you want to deep dive into those topics, just go back and check them out. But the message that I always have for you, Bestie, in relation to weight loss surgery or, even injectables, right, is this. Your body, your business, your decision. So if you've had one or were using these tools or you're considering it, just know that I totally support you in your bodily autonomy. But what I am going to tell you now is what nobody told me. So I went into surgery with this absolute conviction that a smaller body was going to solve things. I mean, think about those lessons from back to 11 years old. That when I was thin, when I was the pretty girl, then confidence would arrive, happiness would land, and all of that food stuff was kind of just sort itself out. Because, of course, surgery would limit what I could eat anyway, so problem solved. And if you've listened to past episodes, you will know that just about 6 months after surgery, I was binge eating again. So, surgery will change your style. GLP-1s will change the food noise, but it doesn't change anything about those patterns in your behavior, in your brain, about the dysregulation in the nervous system, or of any deeply held beliefs around your worth being tied to the way you looked. So none of that stuff, none of the healing is going to lie in your stomach or the number on the scales. And there's something else going on too, something that I want to be really honest about because I think a lot of women are going to relate to this. At that time, I was also in a long relationship with this really beautiful man. He was a good man. He was kind. He was lovely, but he just wasn't my person. I mean, we didn't light each other up, but deep down, we knew that, but I stayed and he stayed. And my reason for staying was that part of me believed that as long as I was in a bigger body, then that was the best I could expect. Again, like nice guy, loving enough, kind. But it didn't set my soul on fire. We were really good friends, but he was not my soulmate. So whilst I was in that bigger body, played it safe. And once I lost the weight, of course, that didn't change the way I felt about my worth and what I deserved. So the version of you who's waiting for that life on the other side of having a smaller body, that doesn't exist. It's just a story that you've been sold. So the real version of you, maybe this confident, free, fully alive version, she's not hiding behind your weight. She's hiding behind unprocessed stuff that maybe is driving your relationship with food and your body this whole time. And I want you to know that you can want to change your body. That is your absolute right. But please, please, please do the inner work alongside it because the eating struggles that you have are not going to be about food. It's really, really not. Okay. So, final lesson 5. You are not broken. You are stuck in a cycle that was never your fault to begin with. So, this one is for every version of me, right? Prior to now. So, the kid at the kitchen table, the teenager with the bowl cut, the student eating chips alone in her room, and the woman waking up from that surgery who was still waiting to feel okay in her skin. None of those versions of me and none of the past versions of you were broken. Okay. What I understand now is a counselor, as someone who has been binge-free since 2019, and as someone who has sat across from hundreds of women who are carrying this exact weight of shame, is that binge and emotional eating, overeating, all of that stuff, it's just really not a flaw in who you are. It is not proof that you're doing a bad job, that you're disgusting, that you're out of control, that you're a disaster. No, they are just adaptive responses to a specific combination of things: restriction, stress, trauma, nervous system overwhelm, and of course, a culture that has been feeding women the message that their body is a project to be managed. So, how can this cycle be your fault? Your fault alone? It's just not. And so, I think that's the part that matters because it means that healing is yours to claim because you're not actually responsible for how all of this started. However, you're the only one who can decide that it ends right here and right now. So I hope I can be an example for you because I healed and you've heard parts of my story and it's not an easy story, right? And I didn't do it through diet planning. I did it through understanding what was really driving my eating and then addressing that. So I re-nourished my body and that stopped triggering the binge restrict cycle. And I learned how to regulate my nervous system instead of outsourcing that job to food. And I finally dealt with the stuff underneath. I dealt with my trauma. And that is the work. And so that's possible for you too if you're willing to show up and you're willing to do it. I mean, that's what the breakup, my programmers work on. That's what I pour every week into this podcast. That's why I show up here for you. Because I know what it feels like to be on this other side. This side, it's amazing. The grass is greener. And so I want that for you too. Food freedom is real and it's possible. And so I hope that listening to these 5 things has been helpful. I wish someone had told me these. And so sharing them with you today, send it back to the past versions of you as well. You know, the world has been actively teaching you that thin equals worthy, and you've just been listening since you were so young. Maybe you also were bullied for your appearance. Maybe it was the girls at school. Maybe it was your family. But that was never information about your body. That was never truth. And maybe you've been through something. Maybe it changed the way you related to food and to your body. And I just want to validate that that makes sense. Maybe you have the belief that losing weight will help you to stop the binges. I'm telling you, it doesn't. It's okay that you think that. And finally, if you've been believing that you're broken or the exception to the rule, that ain't true. You're just stuck in a cycle, and cycles can be broken. Okay? So if you heard your own story in any of mine, you're not alone. And if you want to talk to me or share something or explore how we might work together, send me a DM on Instagram and say the word done. And that is how I know that you are ready and curious about maybe having a wee chat together. I don't bite. And no, it's not a bot. It really is me. So send me a DM saying done. And if the episode has meant something to you, please share it. Send it to maybe your bestie, another woman in your life who might find it helpful because that costs nothing and it might actually change something for her. So I will see you next week, Bestie. Take care of yourself, please. Catch you then. Ciao. All right, besties, that's a wrap for today. If you want to go deeper, check out the links in my show notes. You're going to find free resources, ways we can work together, and more details on my signature program, The Breakup. This is your roadmap to help you to break free from binge and emotional eating. For good. If this episode has helped you, please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're feeling extra kind, leaving a quick review really helps this podcast to reach more women who need it. Take care of your beautiful self, bestie, and I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.